Hello everyone, I am Renderisa and I'm excited to talk about the new features of Canvas. This is a SketchUp plugin that will allow you to add multiple copies of the selected group or component that you have on your model by clicking your left mouse button over where you want to place that copy. Let me give you a demonstration. When you first install the plugin, you will notice that at the toolbar there's a new button that has a brush as a logo. And if you hover over that, it will give you the title, which is Canvas, and a short description. If we click that button, a web dialog is going to be shown, and here's where you're going to change the parameters that will affect the copy that you're going to place. So one thing to notice is that if you first activate the tool and you don't have any group or component selected, and you try to click anywhere on your viewport, you will be prompted a warning that says that before the tool can be used, you have to select a group or a component. Okay, so we want to do that before activating the tool. So we click this cube, which is a group. It's important to notice that that a loose geometry will not work. It has to be a group or a component. Now to activate the tool again, we can do as we mentioned before, clicking that toolbar button, or we can go to the web dialog and click this button near the bottom, and that will activate the tool. Now when we click the button and anywhere on the viewport, a new copy of that selected group is being added. And as default, this is what you will get. But if you want to change the output of the copy that you want to place, you will have to change the parameters. And this is where we're going to explain what each of these parameters can change. The first one is input point. And right now, you're placing a single object per click. If you want to change that to adding multiple objects, if you click and hold your left mouse button, you have to change this from single to multiple. And now, if I click and hold the button and move the cursor around, multiple objects are going to be placed. And this is very cool if you want to quickly populate your scene with objects. Alright, so now we can talk, let me delete this very quickly, about this drop-down menu. The default option is normal, and what this means is that you will place an object where the cursor position is. Okay, so wherever I move the cursors, that's where the object is going to be placed. But let's say I'm going to change that to scatter. What will happen is if I click and hold the button and move, you'll notice that there's a random position generated around the cursor, and this will become more evident if I zoom out. The farther away I get and I apply the objects, the further away the objects are going to be laid down. Okay, if I zoom in very quickly, you will notice that the objects that are being laid down are very close to each other. But if I go very far away, let's go even far away, you'll see they are very far apart. And this is something that you will want to experiment by yourself, see what works for you best, depending on what you want to do. Let me delete what I just copied so I can keep going. Alright. So the next option in the drop-down menu is top viewport. And this is nice if you want to add objects on a straight line. It will not take the cursor position. We will not place the objects around the cursor, but instead it will place the object on top of the viewport. If you see on top over here, there is where the objects are going to be placed. And you can rotate it and use that as reference to place straight lines. Okay? And that is what is best used for. Alright, so now that we've explained the input point parameters, let's go to the next one, which is rotation. Okay? Before we do that, let's go to the default, and we go to rotation. Right now it's set to 0, so that means we place an object, it will not affect the rotation. But if we change that to say 45, that new object place is going to be placed 45 degrees from the original one. Okay. Now an interesting thing is that you can have a range. Let's say we want to rotate from 0 degrees to 360 degrees. Okay. And that will randomly generate a rotation from those parameters. Okay. Now let's move on to scale, and this is going to place a scale factor of 1. This is the default, so that means that the object that's going to be placed is not going to be scaled. If we want to scale that object by 2 and we place that object, you notice that it's twice as big, and so on. We can affect this whatever number we want. And as we mentioned with rotation, we can place ranges. So if we want to scale from 1 to, let's say, to 8, it will randomly choose a factor to scale that object between 1 and 8. Okay, so you get nice variety. Okay, so now let's delete this and move to the next parameters. The next one is only add-on, and what these are basically filters that will add an object, will add a copy depending if those filters parameters are met. So the first one is nothing, and what this means is that the copy that you will add will only apply if there's an empty space. Okay, so right now it's adding an object, but as soon as I try to add a copy to a geometry, on top of a geometry, you will see nothing happens. Only when I move to an empty space is where that object is going to be placed. The next one is selected, and this means that it will only add a copy wherever there is an active selection. So over here there's an active selection, and I click over here, you see that copy is added. If I try anywhere else, it won't work. And this next one is called shadow, and what it does, it will only add the selected copy to where there's shadow. So over here there's a shadow, it will select that object. Nowhere else it will work. Okay, and this applies true to every filter over here, so I want you to experiment which of these do what, and so that you become familiar with this. Okay, so this is the last parameters that you can set. There's other features that I will want to explain, and let me take the time to delete this so I don't confuse you. Okay, this is very cool. What I am about to explain is that you can save the parameters that you set over here to a specific object. Let me demonstrate. If I want to save the current parameters to this object, I select that object and click Save. Now if I select another object and I change the parameters, let's say I want to input point to be scatter and be multiple, and I want to have a rotation between 0 and 360, and then I want to have a scale between 1 and 8, and I want to have a filter to only apply on nothing, and if I click Save, those parameters I saved on that object. Let me demonstrate. If I activate the tool and choose to apply that object, you see those parameters are still active. If I want to change to the parameters set to this first object, to the cube, I select that cube, I deactivate the tool first, select that cube, click Load, and then activate the tool again. And once I try to add the objects again, it will add according to the parameters that was stored on that object. I hope this was clear. And this can improve the speed on where you can work with the tool. Alright, so that's it for the parameters. Let me just show you a couple bonus things. If you notice on top there's a button over here, and this is useful if you already have the parameters that you want to work with and you don't want this web dialog to be that big. You can click this button and it will shrink it a little bit so that it will get out of the way when you're working. If you want to go back where it was, you click that again, and that will set the default size for the web dialog. Now this button over here, besides the play button, if we click that, you will see a couple of options that you can change. For example, if you don't want the cursor to show when you're painting, you can do that, deactivate that. Now when you're painting, you notice that objects are being added but the cursor is not shown. And this I did because I sometimes screen capture what I'm doing on SketchUp and I don't want the cursor to show, so that's good for that. And this last option is if you already know over here, let me show you. If you already know what these two buttons do and you don't need this description shown below, you can deactivate that description by unchecking this button, and now when you go back, you see no description is shown. And lastly, let me give you a demonstration. If you change the parameters and you close the web dialog, next time you open it and you go back to those options are remembered, and this is important. Even if you close your SketchUp, the next time you open a model, those parameters are going to save, and this is very good. Okay, so I guess this is it for explaining what the plugin can do. If you still have any questions on how to use it, or if you have suggestions to improve the plugin, I'll leave a link below to Sketchucation forum where you can ask questions there and make comments. Okay, this is it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time. Bye.